In 1973, a 16-year-old boy was kidnapped in Rome by the Italian mafia. His family was one of the richest in the world. His grandfather was worth $6 billion, the richest private citizen on the planet at the time. The kidnappers asked for $17 million. Not an unreasonable number for a family worth $6 billion. That's 0.28% of their net worth. Less than a rounding error. The grandfather's response? I have 14 grandchildren. If I pay 1 penny now, I'll have 14 kidnapped grandchildren. And he meant it. This is the story of John Paul Getty III, and it is, without question, the most disturbing ransom story in modern history, not because of what the kidnappers did, but because of what the family didn't do. So let me give you context. Because this story doesn't make sense unless you understand the Getty family. J. Paul Getty, the grandfather, made his fortune in oil. He was the founder of Getty Oil, and by the early 1970s, he was officially the richest living American. Forbes put him at $6 billion. In today's money, that's roughly $40 billion. But here's the thing about J. Paul Getty that everyone who knew him understood. The man was pathologically cheap. Not frugal, not careful, cheap. Let me give you an example. He had a mansion in England called Sutton Place. Enormous estate, hundreds of rooms. And when guests came to visit, kings, presidents, business leaders, if they wanted to make a phone call, they had to use a payphone. He installed a payphone in his own mansion so he wouldn't have to pay for his guests' calls. That's not a quirk, that's a pathology. Now, his grandson, John Paul Getty III, who everyone called Paul, was 16 years old and living in Rome in 1973. His parents were divorced. His father was an addict. Paul was essentially on his own, running around Rome, living a bohemian life. And one night in July, he was grabbed off the street by members of the 'Ndrangheta, the Calabrian mafia. They took him to a farmhouse in the mountains of Calabria, southern Italy, remote. No phone signal, no neighbors, no escape. Paul was chained to a stake in a cave for the first few weeks. Then 'Ndrangheta sent a ransom demand to the Getty family, $17 million for the boy's safe return. Now, what would you do if you were worth $6 billion and someone asked for $17 million to return your grandson? You'd pay it in an hour, right? You wouldn't even think about it. $17 million is to J. Paul Getty what $50 is to you. He said no, he publicly stated, and I want you to hear exactly how he phrased this. I have 14 grandchildren. If I pay 1 penny of ransom, I'll have 14 kidnapped grandchildren. And on the surface, that sounds almost logical, almost rational, like a game theory calculation. Pay once, and you incentivize future kidnappings. But here's what that logic ignores. His 16-year-old grandson was chained in a cave in southern Italy, and the people holding him were not known for their patience. Months passed. The kidnappers lowered their demand. $17 million became $10 million, then $5 million. Getty still refused. So let me ask you something. What do you do when you're a criminal organization holding a hostage worth billions, and the family won't pay? In November 1973, an envelope arrived at the offices of the Italian newspaper Il Messaggero. Inside was a lock of red hair and a human ear. Paul's ear, along with a note that read, "This is Paul's ear. If we don't get some money within 10 days, then the other ear will arrive. In other words, he will arrive in little bits." The envelope had been delayed by a postal strike. It had been sitting in an Italian mail sorting facility for 3 weeks before anyone opened it. I want you to think about the absurdity of that sentence. A teenager's severed ear sitting in a mail bag delayed by a postal strike. The randomness of it. The bureaucratic indifference of it. A boy's life hanging on whether the Italian postal service delivers on time. The ear changed things. Not because J. Paul Getty suddenly cared about his grandson, but because the story went public. The media got involved. The embarrassment, there's that word again, the embarrassment of the richest man in the world refusing to pay for his own grandson's ear became a bigger liability than the ransom itself. And here's where the economics get genuinely grotesque. Getty agreed to pay, but not $17 million, not $10 million, not even $5 million. He agreed to pay exactly $2.2 million. Why $2.2 million? Because that was the maximum amount that was tax deductible under US tax law. The richest man on earth negotiated his grandson's ransom down to a tax deduction, but the kidnappers wanted $3 million total. So what about the remaining $800,000? Getty lent it to his own son, Paul's father, at 4% interest. He charged his son interest on the loan to rescue his grandson. Paul was released in December 1973. He was found at a petrol station in southern Italy, alive but traumatized, missing an ear. He was 16. Paul never recovered, not really. He turned to drugs and alcohol. In 1981, at the age of 24, he suffered a stroke caused by a cocktail of drugs and medication. It left him blind, partially paralyzed, and unable to speak for the rest of his life. He died in 2011 at the age of 54. And J. Paul Getty, he died in 1976, 3 years after the kidnapping. He never reconciled with Paul. He left behind a fortune of over $6 billion and a family so broken that the next 2 generations spent decades in courts fighting over the money. So here's the question nobody asks about this story. Was Getty right? His game theory logic, if I pay, I incentivize future kidnappings, is the exact same logic that governments use when they refuse to negotiate with terrorists. It's the logic that insurance companies use when they deny claims. It's the logic of cold rational economics. And in a textbook it makes sense. But in reality, a 16-year-old lost his ear, his health, and eventually his life because his grandfather applied an economic model to a human being. That's the dark side of economic thinking, when the numbers work, but the humanity doesn't. $2.2 million, tax deductible, plus an $800,000 loan at 4% interest. That's what a child was worth to the richest man on earth. Next time I'm taking you inside the world of Somali pirates, not the Hollywood version, the real one, where fishermen became hijackers because foreign trawlers destroyed their ocean, and a single oil tanker ransom can fund an entire village for a decade. Follow economics with Idris. This is just getting started.